Robert here with Seat Concepts. Today we're going to go over a DR650 commuter, and these are the steps we take when we install one for our complete seat cells. This will be the same steps you take when you install it yourself at home. We're going to use a air stapler, some general spray adhesive, 1/4 inch or 5/16 staples, whatever you can find at your local supply store. And we have a staple puller, but you can use a flathead screwdriver and some pliers and it'll do the same thing. When we use an air stapler, it's because it's way easier and more efficient when installing. Some people try to use a manual stapler, spring style. They're very difficult to use, especially depending on the pan you have, how stiff the plastic is. When you're holding it, it tries to absorb the impact and not drive the staple all the way in. On our staplers, we use between 80 and 100 PSI. It depends on the width and the length of the staple you're using. If you have too much air pressure, it will blow the staple through the fabric material. If it's not enough, the staple will go in, but not where the flat part is putting pressure on the cover material. You want some pressure on the cover material because that helps spread the load. All right, first we'll start with spraying some of the adhesive on the pan and the foam. This will allow them to bond together and not move around on the pan while installing the cover. You don't need to use a lot. The primary spots you'll want to spray is up around the front edge here. And when you put the foam over the edge, make sure it's all the way down and around. Some foams have a flange of foam to go around the edge. Some do not, and they stay up on top. Each model varies. At this point, all you're looking for is a little bit on the back, up around that tongue area, and bond it. I usually try laying the foam over the edge of the bench. That way it's not all tacoed. This way you can slide the tongue in first, get it centered, set the front edge where the flaps of foam that we talked about go over nice and evenly. Then you'll come to the back, center the foam up with the pan and stick it down. Make sure it's nice and even. And at that point, you'll flip it over, make sure it's all ready to go. First, we're gonna go start with the front. Make sure the plastic's tight. And what you're gonna look for when you first put these on is you'll be looking at it, are these seams here? When you pull it down, make sure it's even, because if you get it crooked and you start stapling, it's not gonna get any better as you go. So you'll center it up, make sure these are even. I'll start in the center, kind of tack it down, and then, confirm it was straight. At this point, I'm going to leave that to be. We're going to bring the back over. Also, another thing to watch is when you put the front over, you want this seam to be just past the foam on the back side, not way down, because it crushes the foam, just barely past the other side where it's basically touching the gas tank when it's installed. On the back, same thing. There's going to be a seam across here. Just pull it over. You want a chest on the other side of the foam against the pan edge. I'm going to start with just one staple to hold it in place. At this point, I'm going to start right here at the lowest point. So you're pulled down, not too tight to crush the foam, but tight enough you can watch the material kind of pull tight. And then make sure you don't pull one side harder than the other and get it not nice and even from side to side. You're gonna pull down and over. I just put a staple in, same thing on the other side. All right, after you got those two anchored down, you're going to go ahead and start up here along the edges. You're gonna wanna pull the cover out into the edge of the foam. Don't just drag it over, you're gonna smash the foam. You pull it kind of away and over where the seam is tucked over the edge of the foam. At this point, I'll just put one, basically where the seam is from the side materials, one on each side. At that point, I'm gonna reconfirm from looking from the back where my seams are from side to side to make sure it's nice and true. It's looking good, so I can continue with pulling the front tight and stapling. Now, some material and foam designs allow you to put more pressure. If your foam does not tuck over the edge of the pan, those give you a little more wiggle room for pulling the fabric tight. The ones that have foam over it, you basically just barely want to get it over the seam and the edge and just pull it just tight where it's a little low, not much, because you can crush the foam and this causes the seat to look smaller and have bigger gaps against the gas tank. All right, so from there, I got my sides pulled in tight. Now I'm just gonna do the last little piece around here. And this, you can take your time because this will dictate the front where it rolls forward against the gas tank. Same thing with the extra foam of the tuck around. You can cause more problems at this point by pulling it too tight. Loose is your friend, just shy of having wrinkles. So at this point, you'll want to double check your work. It's easier to fix it now and not wait till you start working everything else and this is out of whack and then you have to loosen it up or not and then you cause problems elsewhere. Happy with this seams nice and even along the front edge. Wrinkle free up here, looks good. Happy with the side to side. Now at this point, I'm gonna start working my way back. With dished seats like this Commuter, at this point you'll want to center the foam and the cover because the cover floats a little bit so you can slide it. Again, you do not want to glue down the cover to the foam. You'll never get it to pull and stretch that way. It's going to be bonded, it won't fit right, and you're going to fight it the whole way. So from here I'm going to set it back down and start checking from side to side. It's nice and even. It's like this one came, it's a little bit over, so not a big deal. I'll pull the cover up, put your hand over the edge, just kind of pull the whole foam, the cover over on the foam, and recheck it. Now it's tugged over, nice and even, and then we'll go into installing it. At this point, I'll make sure it's nice and even, it's staying in the channel. When I pull this over, I'm also going to pull it back a little bit. That'll help take the wrinkles out from this area right here and pull the pocket into the foam pocket. That'll pull the cover into the foam pocket this way. So again, I'm pulling it over and back. You don't want to pull it too tight on one side. It's easy because the other side's not anchored, so you can pull it really, really far and just twist the whole thing over. In this case, I'm going to pull it over about 1 inch and then staple it. Then we're going to move back to the side. Again, pull the cover kind of away so you're not fighting the drag resistance over the foam. You're going to pull it up and over. Feel free to kind of pet the material back, helps kind of drag it back so you overcome that resistance of the cover against the foam. Again, back at the same time as going over and tighten it up. So at this point, double check, pretty even. You can wiggle a little bit, see it's a little bit off, kind of rub it and push it over and see if it self-centers. At that point, you can finish stapling it. So along here, this isn't like a high load area because most of your pressure is straight down. So along here, I space them anywhere from 1/2 to 1 inch apart. At the seams where the cover sews together, in that area, one of the things is the extra material causes the staple to go into the pan a little bit less. So the 2 staples helps spread that load. So along that area, I've done it enough so I know just a little bit of pressure. Typically the cover will stay pretty even. If you have the cover going along and then it's either going this way or this way all of a sudden, chances are you've either pulled it too tight or not enough. And it's causing the cover to do this along the edge. Should be pretty even for the most part. So at this point, double check your work, make sure it's nice and even. Looking at it, everything's looking good. We're gonna go ahead and finish up this last bit to the corners. Same thing, just gonna roll it over, put a little pressure on it so that you're putting some preload on the material. Now let's go ahead and put a couple staples in right there. Same with this side. Now you might notice I'm not pinching the fabric and trying to pull it. That's a pretty easy mistake to do. It works, but your fingers are really gonna hurt, and it's a lot easier to use the advantage of either compress it a little bit and roll it with your fingers, or roll it over and push down with your thumb. That helps stretch that material versus trying to pinch it, pull it, and hold it down and staple at the same time. Just roll it with your thumb or your fingertips. Now, here at the transition, you're gonna see a little bit of excess material. It's just a matter of a little bit of a fold over itself, kind of like wrapping a present and stapling it down. All right, now you've pretty much got this set up from here forward. Now at this point, we're gonna go ahead and come back here, finish up the back section. At this point, I'll make sure the excess material is pulled up and not tucked under itself between the foam and the cover. Come back here, and we're gonna start with right behind the bracketry. Go ahead and pull it down, same thing, about 1 inch almost to the transition. Hold it down, go ahead and put a staple in. Okay, at this point, you're gonna start doing like we kind of did up here with the fold method. As the foam comes together, the material has extra as it tucks over, so you're gonna have to kind of accordion it so that excess material is absorbed under here and not visible up along the outside. The back, there is the seam, so you're gonna wanna pull this over the pan so the seam is on the bottom. I'm gonna pull that over and put 1 staple in just to keep it over the edge. And now you're gonna work on this section that we talked about. All right, so I got my staples in. You might come across from when you pulled this back, you might have pulled it tight enough that when you start working your way up, there might be like excess material right here, so you have a big flap. slowly inch your way forward, take a staple out, pull the slack just enough where there's no wrinkling, staple, pull forward, staple. You might have to back up 1 or 2 staples. You should be able within, you know, a 2 to 3 inch span, absorb all that excess material. All right, so like in that one, I had to pull 1 staple out, pull the excess material out, nice and smooth, ready to go. So at this point, saw the top, we're looking good. All we gotta do now is pull this back section up. You can go ahead and anchor it. All right, so in the back, got it tucked over there, stapled down. Might be a little tiny bit of bunching, not a problem, it's against the fender edge. The warmer the material is, so if you're in a sunny afternoon doing this, leave the cover outside for 5–10 minutes in the sun, let it warm up. That allows it to stretch a lot easier, or do it inside in a warm, climate controlled area. The colder it is, the more resistant it is to pulling tight and getting the wrinkles out and stretching. All right, with that, you confirm everything looks good, even, no wrinkling. We talked about, there might be a wrinkle or some showing, like see this one's barely, kind of see a little bit. That is from the plastic underneath. This will relax out and be absorbed into the foam over the next couple days. Also, if you're doing it when it's cold, and that's your choice. You're forced to that situation. Don't sweat like a little wrinkle here or a wrinkle there. This, once it's out in the sun on the bike for a couple hours, you rode it a little bit, the cover's gonna relax and shift and settle in. So don't beat yourself up on your first day installing and there's like a little wrinkle or two or something like that, especially if it's cold. Just go ahead and finish up, put it on the bike, wait for a nice warm day, leave it outside, ride it a little bit. You'll find out a lot of that stuff will relax right in and no problem there. So at this point, I'm happy with all the outside of the installation views of the wrinkles and whatnot. So at this point, you just trim the excess material and the plastic liner. Just use a razor blade. You can use a utility knife. Just be careful. It's easy enough in certain areas to nick the cover somewhere that is above the staple line where you're keeping and not cutting off. Small nicks, things like that, not going to cause the cover to fail. We use a marine grade reinforced vinyl. It's going to be pretty durable. You might, if you're really worried about some kind of water intrusion, which we have the plastic liner for that reason. But if you want, some people can buy those patch kits or even put a little dab of silicone or something over it to fill the fibers, but you're not really gonna have any problems. All right, so when you start trimming, here's a trick I found. Find either the plastic, here we go, we're starting into the tarp material. Just go ahead and grab it and just pull it tight, because if it's loose, sometimes you fight it. When you have it just pulled a little tight, you get to control it and it doesn't like walk around and bind up. You have better control. And for some of you, if you get to some point and you can't really see where you're going, feel free to go ahead and just stop, cut it off, pull the stuff out of your way. You don't want to keep working somewhere you can't see and then possibly cut too far and get into the cover material that you wanted to keep. And feel free to stop, come back from the other angle. And just try to connect the two dots where you were. And there you go. And just work your way all the way around. Now when you're trimming, you don't always have to be trimming the material off. There's just enough and it's nice and even, flush, don't worry about trimming it. You don't have to trim it. There's not always excess to be trimmed off at all points. If you're content with what's hanging over, it looks clean, you're happy with it, you just clean up, pick some of the plastics off that's excess. At that point, just confirm you have staples. You missed a spot, put an extra one in, uneven, pop them out. Taking a staple out and putting a new one in is not a problem. You're not going to have a problem with the cover running or a rip starting from that point with the reinforced fabrics we used. Hope that helps you and enjoy your ride.
Since 2009, Seat Concepts has been dedicated to making the best aftermarket seats. More comfort, more grip, more riding. For 10 years, we've continued to raise the bar. Innovation and American craftsmanship make Seat Concepts the world-leading manufacturer of power sports seats.